The takeover became the take back as former undisputed lightweight champion Teofimo Lopez Jr. moved up to 140. First fight in 8 months since a tumultuous, not only the loss to George Kambosos, but the medical issues, the divorce, the issues with promoters and networks, the mental health challenges. I mean, Teofimo, for a guy who just turned 25, had been through it all. Nobody was believing that Pedro Campa was per se world-class competition, but Chuck, not only did he go in there and did what he had to do in getting the late stoppage, Teo was the showman that we all knew. I have seen polarizing reactions from the boxing hardcore. People
really?
Like, oh, he's back, baby. Let's put him in there with Josh Taylor or Ryan Garcia, to people going, man, he got hit a lot against a guy who was big, was rugged, but can't really punch in Pedro Campa. From you, and I know you're not a diehard boxing guy, but you know what's going on in general. What did you see from Teo? Good, bad, a little, both?
I mean, he's a new weight class coming back. He's only fought, once in, 22 months?
Yes.
And that was, I mean, like, you think about that, and also the medical issue you mentioned, which, you know, is actually crazy. I can't even think of the equivalent of that in an MMA fight, where people are like, you could have died, man.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just
like, you should have died, actually, yeah.
So, given all of that, I thought he looked very good. You know what I mean?
I have to agree with you.
It's like you're in a new weight class, and he wasn't. It's funny too. We were just talking about the PFL, the guys who are hungry. I don't know how boxing does this sometimes, but this guy Campbell was not even on any of the promo material. Like all of the, it was like you would think that it was just one guy showing up and like raising his
boxing
belt.
normally. Yeah.
I mean, it was hilarious that the guy was just had no share in the promotional material. And so he's also like, what, 34-1? Like, I know he's not fighting the best competition.
Never fought outside of Mexico.
Right. So it's like one of those situations you're like, I don't know, this guy could be better than you realize.
Well,
so,
okay, it wasn't
decent at times.
It wasn't
a
perfect night at the office, meaning Teofimo. Let's give Campa credit. He took a good punch. I think what we learned here is, it's weird. Teofimo was considered a large lightweight, and he always had problems making weight, so him moving up was inevitable. Maybe he picked the right time just to put the lightweight happenings behind him, start a new chapter. It wasn't perfect. He got hit. He got hit by a guy who's slow in Campa, but has a good chin and was big in there. But I think we realized, Chuck, that moving forward at 140, when Teofimo does face better competition, he's going to have to fight his way out of these fights, I think. Did you see that size difference was kind of legit?
Size difference is there. And I mean, obviously, we were talking about this a little bit before. Some of the dudes he would have to encounter. You're like, that's, it might be tempting. That chin is pretty tempting and all of that stuff if he's not carrying the same power.
There were shots he hit Campa with that I'm like, you would expect the guy to go down, and he wasn't going down. So was it just a...
That's an interesting
Was he fighting a zombie on the right night and finally figured out a way to stop him, or is his power really not going to make that leap?
Although that first knockdown was pretty... The way he kind of sat down and like shook his head, like, I felt that.
I mean, look, the reason why I thought Teofimo, overall, this is a plus, because, look, he conquered a major mental hurdle getting back here and doing this and winning it and taking punches and all that. But, like, he was back to showman mode. And to me, that shows that, like, he was feeling. I know people are like, oh, the dad getting in the camera. Like, dude, that's who they are. That's who the fuck they are. They're crazy and they're not hiding. It's like, I feel like Teofimo on the rise up, Chuck, was trying so hard to show people that, yeah, my dad's crazy and out of control, but I'm young and I got this. Then we found out last year he doesn't got this anymore. I think him and his dad, whether you like it or not, or whether you have confidence in their future, are pretty much going, this is who we are, and we're just going to be who we are. And maybe that's the best way.
He's 25 years old. And at 25 years old, like you said, he's already lived enough life. I sometimes think with boxers, so people in the fight game, they go through so much adversity early. They can turn into something completely monstrous as they go forward because they have that wisdom, they have that experience. They've already kind of dealt with, you know, the bullshit that they're going to have to deal with. It's an interesting situation he's in, man.
I mean, he's still dynamic as shit,
the future is so big for
But did you see, I mean, he put together some punches and combinations that you're like, I asked Roy Jones Jr. on my old podcast, you know, who is the one fighter that reminds you of Roy Jones Jr.? He's like, maybe Teofimo and nobody else. You know,
long ago did he say that?
That was about 3 years ago. And it's like, that's the ultimate compliment because he can still do freak-like athletic things and surprise you with punches. I thought, you know, even in that loss to Kambosos, he showed a warrior's mentality that he doesn't get credit for because of the comments he made about kind of sounding crazy afterwards.
If you could book him against anybody,
well, here's the deal.
Put him next. What would you do?
Let's talk about this because there's an elephant in that room in Las Vegas, and that was Oscar De La Hoya, the Golden Boy promoter who promotes Ryan Garcia. It seemed like, so he was there as a guest of Teofimo, which always shows, by the way, that Team Takeover, Teofimo Sr. and Jr. are always one step ahead setting up the next thing, so you got to give them that credit. They're bringing an out-of-network rival here, but I think everyone realizes this. Ryan Garcia is hungry to make a big fight. There's some talk, could it be Tank Davis on a crossover level? Could it now be Teofimo? I think if you're Bob Arum and company, maybe that's the reason why he was interviewed. I was surprised on the ESPN broadcast that they brought the mic to De La Hoya, who I get is a Hall of Famer. He's also a rival promoter on another network.
So complicated
and we're like,
boxing, man.
what do you think? Can we make a Ryan Garcia fight? So look, is it more likely that Teo stays in-house at 140? Yes. Top Rank and ESPN also have access to Josh Taylor, who's still, even though he got stripped of 2 belts, is still the recognized champion. Jack Catterall, who almost upset him. You got Regis Prograis, who you have easy access to. You got former champion Jose Ramirez. You got Jose Zepeda, who's a big action fighter. There's plenty of fun fights to make. But sometimes you get these windows where a perfect 2-network sexy crossover fight, if you can make it, you don't run from it. If you're asking me, BC, how realistic is to close this year Teofimo versus Ryan Garcia? In theory, not realistic at all. We've got rival promoters, rival networks, and for there to be a 2-network pay-per-view, it's typically got to be Mayweather-Pacquiao, Klitschko Joshua, even Fury Wilder. But here's the deal. Ryan Garcia's got 7-8 million Instagram followers. Teo
That's what I'm saying. Is it bigger than we realize? Like, I honestly think that both guys, because, you know, I'm an MMA guy who pays attention peripherally to this stuff, but I feel like both those guys have been hammered, like, media-wise, and I feel like a lot of people are paying attention to them. It feels like they're bigger than they've ever been, to me.
So I like that there seems to be an aggressive want for this next generation of young talent to not miss out, to not have to do the Mayweather-Pacquiao or Spence Crawford where we're waiting 3, 4, 5 years, to make it happen now. I was thinking about this. Why would ESPN be so willing to entertain this? Because I think people still look at Ryan Garcia and say, yes, he's dynamic. Yes, he's got a big fan base. He's offensively skilled. But people see the vulnerability. They see a potential avenue to stop him if you get him into a war. I wonder if that would be worth, before he gets that first loss, to, you know, do a double. I mean, can DAZN and ESPN work together? Crazier things have happened, you know? I mean,
DAZN don't work with people, man. Come on.
Can Tank Davis get in this picture? I mean, how realistic is Garcia Davis? I hope we see one combination to close this year, of course, of these young studs that are all seemingly moving up in weight at the same time to face each other. The fact that I think the best thing about this for Teofimo, it's a successful comeback. But it wasn't perfect. There's still questions to be answered about going to the next level. So if it was Teofimo versus Ryan Garcia, the fact that we don't know more than we actually know about how good they are, and that's the best buildup for a great fight.
Dude, I don't know how you felt about this, but so many times when a Teofimo's fighting, like, or something like this, it coincides. And if you have to choose, I have to watch MMA. This was perfect because you had that San Diego event, which ended just in time for the boxing card. I was able to watch all of that, and I think that might have been a nice little push. ESPN, you know what I mean? I felt like he was getting. I felt like a lot of people were watching it.
I agree with that.
Have been, you know?
I agree with that, and that shows you that there is certainly value in that connection with you know, pushing the UFC but putting Top Rank right along with it and PFL and all that. I mean, interesting. On that co-main event, quickly, Chuck, 19-year-old Xander Zayas. Rashad was on Friday's show. He said, "Look, I've been seeing this kid in South Florida gyms for a long time. He's 19 years old." He's from Puerto Rico. Now, look, I'm not going to ask you the type of intrinsic, deep knowledge questions that you may not know, but from watching him, does he look like future star to you? I know.
Yes. Yes. I mean, he looked like he was handling the situation just fine. And honestly, man, he carries himself like somebody he doesn't look 19.
No.
When a guy has that kind of, like, feel to him at 19 years old, yes, you're paying attention.
Did you see the slow motion of some of these knockdowns and eventually the knockout that he had? It's just sort of next level where I'm putting this punch out here just to kind of move you in the direction of the one that's coming after it. This kid's really smart. And Chuck, there is an opening for a next great Puerto Rican superstar. And that's a position that,
you know. That's a big time thing. That's such a tradition over there.
That island will bang the drum for you globally. And you know, let's see if he can get there. It was interesting to see.